Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to show you 4 different ways of making 2-stitch cables. 2-stitch cables are where one stitch is passed over another stitch, and these can be abbreviated as C2F or C2B cables, or 1/1 LC or 1/1 RC respectively. C2F or 1/1 LC cables travel to the left, and C2B or 1/1 RC cables travel to the right. It's all down to which stitch passes over the other. As you can see, I've already done 4 rows of knit stitches, and this is just to form a garter stitch border, because most of the swatch is going to be stockinette stitch and that curls at the edges. As you can see, I've added a stitch marker on the front. This is just a handy reminder of which side we're on, because we'll always be doing the cables on the right side. Okay, so I'm going to begin with 1 row of stockinette stitch. So that's 1 row of knit stitches. Then on the wrong side, I'll knit 3. Purl until I've only got 3 stitches left. And then knit 3. Obviously the 3 knit stitches on either side is the garter stitch border. Note that this is the pattern we'll follow for every wrong side row until we finish this swatch. Right, so for the first cable row, we're going to knit 7. And then we're going to do a C2F or cross to front cable. This can also be abbreviated as 1/1 LC, which stands for 1/1 left cross. Okay, so take your cable needle, which should be a similar diameter to your knitting needles, and use the short end to slip the first stitch purlwise, like so. And because this is a front or left cross, then you hold the cable needle at the front. If we held the first stitch at the back instead, then that would make a right cross. Then you need to knit a stitch, and then knit 1 off the cable needle. So slide the stitch to the end of the long side of the cable needle and arrange the needles as you normally would to knit. And then just knit that stitch. And that's a C2F completed. And now I'm just knitting 4 stitches, and then I'll show you the C2B or cross to behind cable, which can also be abbreviated as 1/1 RC or 1/1 right cross. So now take your cable needle and use the short end to slip the first stitch purlwise. And leave this behind the needles. A very handy phrase to remember here is "I'll be right back," because if you want to make a right cross, then you need to hold the first stitch at the back. Then knit a stitch as normal, and then knit the stitch off the cable needle. So slide the stitch to the end of the long side of the cable needle, arrange the needles as you would to do a normal knit stitch, and just knit that stitch off the cable needle. This can be a little bit awkward. And that's 1 C2B cable completed. And then just knit to the end. And here you can see the cables we've created. 1 that travels to the left and 1 that travels to the right, both being 1 stitch wide. Right, so now I'm going to show you how you can knit these same cables but without a cable needle. Most people find it a lot easier and quicker to not have to use a cable needle for such small cables. Okay, so I'm just going to knit up to the same point as before. So I knit 7, and then I'm going to do a C2F. So take your right hand needle behind the left hand needle and take it down through the back of the second stitch. And then you're going to hold the base of the 2 stitches and slide them off the needle. Then take the left hand needle into the first stitch that's just hanging there. Then slip that stitch from the right hand needle back to the left hand needle without twisting it. And then just knit these 2 stitches. And that's it, that's a C2F cable. As you can see, you've created a left cross. And now I'm just knitting 4 stitches and then I'll do another C2B. So for this, you take your right hand needle in front of the left hand needle and take it down through the front of the second stitch. Then slide the 2 stitches off the left hand needle, making sure the second stitch stays on the right hand needle. And then take the left hand needle into the stitch that's free. And then slip the stitch that's on the right hand needle back to the left hand needle without twisting it. This passes the first stitch behind and the second stitch in front. And then just knit these 2 stitches. And that's a C2B completed. As you can see, the cable is travelling to the right. And then I just knit to the end. And here you can see the result. The first few cables here were made with a cable needle, and you can see that the examples made without a cable needle look just the same. Not having to use a cable needle just makes it so much quicker. Next, I'm going to show you a slip stitch method of making these cables, and I personally find this one the easiest. So again, I knit 7 stitches. And now I'm going to do a C2F cable. To do this, you first need to slip 2 stitches knitwise, separately, to the right hand needle. So take the right hand needle up through the front of the first stitch as if to knit, but instead of knitting it, you just slip it off the needle. Like so. And then repeat that again. Then slip these 2 stitches together knitwise back to the left hand needle by taking the left hand needle up through the front of these 2 stitches and transferring them like so. You've now swapped the positions of these 2 stitches and you can just work them however you wish. In our case, we're just going to knit these 2 stitches. And that's the C2F completed. As you can see, this cable travels to the left. I then knit 4 stitches before doing the C2B. So to do this, you need to slip 2 stitches together knitwise by taking the right hand needle up through the front of the 2 stitches as if to knit, but instead of knitting them, you just slip them off the needle. Then slip each of these stitches knitwise, separately, back to the left hand needle. So take the left hand needle up through the front of the stitch and transfer it, and then repeat. And then you can just work these stitches however you wish, and in our case we're going to be knitting both of them. So just knit 2 stitches. And that's a C2B completed. As you can see, this cable travels to the right. And then I knit 7 stitches. And here you can see the result. And that's how you do the slip stitch method. And lastly, I'm going to show you one more method to make these same cables, and this time I'm simply going to be knitting the second stitch before the first. So I knit up to the same point in the knitting again, and once more I'm going to do a C2F. To do this, I'm going to knit through the back loop of the second stitch. So I take the right hand needle down through the back of the second stitch, like so, and then do all of the steps of a knit stitch, except I don't slip the stitch off the needle. Make sure when you're pulling that loop through to the front you're only pulling one loop. You don't want the needle to catch on any other strands. Note that because you're knitting into the back of the loop, you're actually twisting this stitch. But it doesn't really matter because this stitch is the one that's travelling behind, so it's mostly hidden. Then knit into the first stitch as you normally would. So go up through the front of the stitch, knit it, and slip it off the needle. But this time you also slip the second stitch off the needle. And that's the C2F completed. As you can see, this cable travels to the left. And now I'm just knitting 4 stitches before I do another C2B. To do this, you need to knit into the front of the second stitch. So take the right hand needle up through the front of the second stitch. Take it over the top of the first stitch. And then do the usual steps of a knit stitch. When you bring the loop of yarn to the front through the second stitch, make sure you completely ignore the first stitch. Then you just knit into the first stitch as normal. And then slip that first stitch off as well as the second stitch. And that's the C2B completed. As you can see, this cable travels to the right. And then I knit until the end. And that's it. That's how you knit the second stitch before the first. Remember, all you're really doing is swapping the position of 2 stitches. And here you can see the result. You can see the C2Fs on the right and the C2Bs on the left. I really hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.